Let's talk a little bit about millennials rising to bosses and having older subordinates with workplace expert and author of The Old School Advantage, Jim Whitten. Jim, good morning.
Hi, Gary. Good to be with you.
So how are millennial bosses different from the generation before?
Well, you got to think of it this way. Generally, millennials, they value immediate feedback. We've heard that many times. They like autonomy, so a little freedom. But they're also about a purpose bigger than themselves. So if you just think about those three things on their own, those aren't bad characteristics to have in a boss by any means. But then you have to think about who is actually going to rise to the level of supervisor. Well, that's likely to be somebody in the millennial generation that is what I would call has some old school skills and, they're wise beyond their years. So they're probably not your average millennial as that generation has been stereotyped. They also bring technology and youthful enthusiasm, typically. And then once you couple that with the boomers in their reports that may be boomers, they're going to bring the experience and hopefully some wisdom on board as well. So you've really got a team, if you want to look at this positively, that brings the best of both worlds. You've got the experience and the wisdom, technology and the enthusiasm. And so I think it could be a very positive thing moving forward. Just kind of depends on how you look at it.
Jim, talk about some of the challenges that millennials who rise to a management type position and have, certainly Gen Xers and maybe even some boomers that work for them. From the boss's standpoint, from the millennial standpoint, what are some of the challenges they'll face?
Well, clearly, when you have a generation gap, it's usually due to a communication gap. And so being able to communicate, being on the same page, as we might say, is going to probably be their biggest challenge, because that's where most misunderstandings and problems come from, either a lack of communication or defining issues or challenges differently. And so that's where you need to get to know them. Now, another thing about millennials in general is they thrive in environments where they're coached. In other words, they work well with experienced mentors. And getting back to what I was saying earlier, if they can capture that, if they can embrace that aspect of it, in other words, give credit where it's due to their boomer employees or subordinates, and say, look, I know you've got experience. Teach me, coach me, and then I'll reverse mentor you as well. That's going to go a long way. So, there's no new answer. It's about communication and really building rapport. We go all over the country talking to organizations about how to systematically build rapport within the workplace. You'd be surprised at how many people sit next to each other in cubicles and don't know where somebody is from originally. They don't know about their family. They don't know about their hobbies or what they like to do for fun. And so just creating an atmosphere and actually giving them a pattern of a conversation to have in those regards can do tremendous positive things in the work environment.
Is one of the big challenges the not just building communication, but how you prefer to communicate? Because the written word versus the spoken word versus social media, is finding that common ground on how you're going to communicate a critical element of it?
No question. But again, I'm going to reiterate that somebody, regardless of the generation they come from, somebody that is placed in a supervisory role is probably someone who is an excellent communicator. And so however they choose to communicate, I mean, if you have a scale of connecting with people, texting is at the bottom because you just can't do much with it. It's kind of like a walkie-talkie. But, face-to-face, handwritten notes, these are the richer connecting type of communications. And I'm telling you, I think these millennials that are going to be put in charge are going to be very good at that kind of communication. But as a subordinate, you just got to kind of wait and see what they prefer. But the key is that you do it, and you do it well and often.
Interesting stuff. Thanks for the time this morning, Jim. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Jim Whitten, workplace expert and author of The Old School